Captains of Industry, brought to you by Airtel.
South Africa's economy has been built on the blood, the sweat and the tears of the mining industry. In recent years, though, the glow seems to be fading from the industry. South Africa's fallen in the rankings of gold production in particular, though it's still a leading platinum producer. Professor Bheki Sibiya needs to remember some of these positive indicators in the work that he does as the CEO of the Chamber of Mines. He's also renowned as the former CEO of Business Unity South Africa. He's a former president of the Black Management Forum and chair formerly of the Small Enterprise Development Agency. Bheki Sibiya is our captain of industry tonight. Thanks for staying with us. Before the break, we were talking about the very controversial issue of equity, ownership and possible nationalization of resources. How political is your job?
My job is a commercial job which requires political savvy, and therefore I'm not a politician. However, I need to understand how to interact with the politicians, but also the government officials who should not necessarily be the politicians.
We spoke about transformation, why it's moving so slowly, BE, whether it's working. Let's just point to the example of Aurora Mines. I think it's a very, very sad and a blemish on the conscience of all those who are advocating for black economic empowerment. We tend to see a lot of empowerment deals in the mining sector. You said they're the fastest to transform. But this is the one example where people argue for equity, they get it, and then they mismanage resources. Is this the shape and face of things to come?
Lerato, in my language, we say akukho soka lingenasici, which says there is no handsome hunk who doesn't have any blemish. And therefore, for us as a mining industry, doing a fairly good job as we do, Aurora is a blemish. It is a disappointment. Honestly, to justify Aurora would be a mistake. One needs to understand, though, how has Aurora come about? Aurora has come about because some young entrepreneurs with no experience in mining looked at the opportunity and they thought they are going to have easy money. And unfortunately, they bought a lemon. Aurora is a lemon. They are buying it from Pamoti Gold. And Pamoti Gold, being fairly experienced people who also bought a lemon and actually passed it on to Aurora. And one may need to look at it and say, who did Pamoti Gold buy this lemon from? Because the lemon sometimes has a source. However, though, it is a manifestation of the asset which deteriorated, and when it should have been disposed of, not sold to BEE, it was sold to BEE. It was unfortunate.
I think a lot of people are looking at the fact that ownership is going to come in the form of junior miners coming to the fore. That's really the space in which empowerment deals are happening. And we really need to ensure that this does not happen again in South Africa, where black entrepreneurs buy an asset that's distressed, can't make it productive, can't find money to liquidate the asset, can't make it profitable, don't pay their workers, leading to a very distressing situation that we've seen. This cannot be how things are going to be going forward, and yet many people are saying that's exactly what's going to happen when you have BE in mining.
I think let's just dwell a bit with Aurora. How the current owners of Aurora are dealing badly with the employees, it is unfortunate, because I think it is devoid of Ubuntu. It's devoid of humanity at some stage. At a human level, they should be dealing with their employees better than they currently do. And now, one looks at it and says, junior miners, I agree. The future of South African mining, it is going to be growing around the junior miners. However, the best place to begin is not to buy an asset fully. The best place to begin is where you buy the prospecting license. Because when you do that, you are going to then have this asset, which is the prospecting license, which you would partner and convert it into a mining license. You convert that into an operating mine. It's one good area to begin with, and those who have begun in those areas are doing well. The second area to begin with is to acquire the minority stake 26% or thereabout in the operating mine, and therefore the majority of the responsibility lies with the vendors or those who are majority shareholders who have been operating the company for a while, and then thereafter increase the shareholding until you have the majority. But if you begin with a majority of buying an asset which is a hand-me-down, then it's a sure to Aurora situation.
You talk about prospecting licenses, and I know there's a system devised by the Minerals Department of Minerals in the government.
Yes.
If you look at the case of ArcelorMittal ICT, people say here's a classic example of potential cronyism in this country, where the mines become instruments that rent seekers enter the economy of the country, not to make the mines profitable, but to enrich themselves. How do you respond to that?
Lorado, you are so adept at picking bad exceptions. You are just a perfectionist at that. Again, the ArcelorMittal ICT issue is an unfortunate issue because when one looks at it, it is just clumsy. Clumsy on many parts. ArcelorMittal on one part, and Kumba sometime on one part, and then ICT on another. And I think in terms of the parties which are involved, they need to deal with that. But in terms of DMR as well, Department of Mineral Resources, one picks up that there is some clumsiness which they need to deal with. And therefore, for us, we need to be saying there are many operating mines and many operating companies. Those are just the exceptions which, when they show their ugly head, they, as it were, blind us to the good things which are done by African rainbow minerals, Shandugas of this world, Exaros of this world. I can mention a lot where one looks at and say, Exaro, Yesizwe, growing in terms of whether it's gold or it's platinum, it is just doing wonderful job. And therefore, for us, we need to be saying, whilst we look at the bad things, we need to say, are they as many as the good things however painful those bad things may be?
Let me ask you to put on your hat as the former CEO of Business Unity SA, because there is a big call right now for deeper engagement between government and business. You've mentioned that tripartism.
Yes.
What do you make of events that have played themselves out in Busa recently, with the election of a new CEO, for instance, and some members of the Black Management Forum insisting that anybody who represents business in this country must be black? Why does everything in this country always have to boil down to race?
It's because we are teenagers. We are young, we are 18-year-old as a country. I think what is happening in Busa, let's look at the good aspect. It's good that Busa came into being, because then we have black business people, white business people joining hands and saying, we want to build this economy. And under the former president, Thabo Mbeki, now under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma, there is acceptance of Busa as the one voice for business, the authoritative voice for business, which is great. There is acceptance from the unions, Union Federation, particularly COSATU, that Busa is the authoritative voice of business, and therefore it becomes a vehicle. And I think, in my view, it is unfortunate that BMF in particular, who had the fortune that the first CEO of Busa came from the BMF background. The second CEO of Busa came from the BMF background. Instead of BMF humbling itself and say, you know, we are grateful that we have generated the leaders who have been accepted by their white compatriots to lead this organization, and therefore we want to contribute to the choice of the appropriate, and then to say BMF has a birthright to choose the Busa CEO. What birthright is that?
And
what birthright is that?
Of course, you're one of those former Busa CEOs who comes from the Black Management Forum, being a former president. You spoke a Zulu term, and it demonstrates to me you're very proud of your heritage, and it's a rich culture, the Zulu culture, in all senses, and it's a renowned one. Everywhere you go in the world, everybody
not better
knows,
than any.
No, but it's renowned, and everybody knows about the Zulu people, Shaka Zulu, the military prowess, the warrior. But what do you draw from your culture that really inspires you in how you approach your career and your life?
If there's anything I draw from my culture and my parents, it was diligence.
Yeah.
You know, when I struggle to figure out how I can be smart on issues, how to work and I'll burn the midnight oil, And I would just wish that for us in South Africa and the African continent, we were to say, you know, being bright is fine. However, being diligent and hardworking is the one which sustains most cultures. Look at China, look at Japan, and I think we need to emulate those examples.
Are you a hard taskmaster then?
I am a hard worker. And in terms of taskmaster, I challenge people to say, let them do their best. I don't accept what is short of their best without being a hard taskmaster. I'm a very kind, diligent master.
The most important life lessons that you've learned, besides being diligent, who's that one person who said something to you that's resonated for life and eternity?
Well, you would look at it and say he is going to have his birthday in about a month's time. I think it is Madiba, who in his book, Long Walk to Freedom, he says education is a great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of the peasant can become the doctor. The child of mine workers can become the head of the mine. And the son of farm workers can become the president of a great nation. But when he closes, he says, it is not what we get given. It's what we use with what we have that separates one man from another. And therefore for us, for me, I look for the hero inside, and I get the hero inside. I utilize that because there is a heroine inside you, and there is a heroine inside every woman. There is a hero inside every man. But for us, we tend to look somewhere else rather than look inside, and therefore we don't utilize that which God has given us.
So when you tap into that repository of knowledge, of experience, of inspiration, where's your career going next?
I am 54 years old. I'm the CEO of the Chamber of Mines. I want to work for the next 4 to 6 years, retire at the Chamber of Mines, and do other interesting things. So I am not going anywhere. If you hear me having left, I would have been fired. I will not have resigned.
Bheki Sibiya, you've been a great, compelling guest. I thank you so much for being our captain of industry and talking to us frankly about some of the more challenging and pressing issues facing this economy.
Pleasure.
Particularly in mining. Professor Bheki Sibiya, the CEO of South Africa's Chamber of Mines, frank and open discussion. Thank you so much for watching this edition of Captains of Industry.